Hey everybody, I'm Patrick V, and you're listening to the Lead Like No Other podcast, where I interview individuals whose actions are inspiring others to do great things, and also in uncovering the research that demonstrates that our ability to lead like no other, it's available to all of us. And it all begins when we're able to dissect what it takes to lead like no other. Today's guest certainly fits in that category. Her name is Susan Ibitz, and she runs a company called the Human Behavior Lab. Our conversation revolved all around reading everything from microexpressions to somebody's facial features to body language, and how important that is in terms of making a connection potentially with somebody in terms of how we show up, but also in reading other people that allows us to be able to connect with them and see what's going on based on how they're showing up and responding to us. This is such an amazing conversation. And I think we're just at the beginning of this in terms of understanding, how do I read other people? We talk about this all the time in emotional intelligence and developing emotionally intelligent behaviors, especially around awareness of others, this ability to read other people. And that's really what this speaks to. It's not about a hack. It's really about how to make a connection with other people on a more effective level. So why don't we get into it? Susan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Lead Like No Other podcast. You and I both really got introduced to each other through a mutual membership in the Forbes Coaches Council that we're involved with. Once you reached out to me and I saw your background, I was like, this is a no-brainer to get you on this, because it obviously is something that I'm pretty passionate about and believe so much in terms of how it can help us, whether in leadership or in teams or in conflict management or negotiation. And going on your website and looking at some of the things that you talked about that you're doing, microexpression and facial readings and all of these things, I was thought, this is a great opportunity to really pick your brain in terms of where this is going from a standpoint of all of those things, leadership, negotiation. How did you start Human Behavior Lab in the first place?
Well, Patrick, first of all, thank you for having me. Human Behavior Lab started as a need to put all the studies and work that I was doing. I want to frame it, and I was working before. I've been doing what I do for 27 years around. I'm almost going 28. It's scary. And behavioral, you're going to have people who has behavioral analysis or do different things in behavior, but I wanted to bring behavior to humans, to lame people who does management, who people who want to improve in communication. And in the other hand was a lab where I have the chance to play with people and integrate people to do crazy studies. So that's how Human Behavior Lab come from shooting ideas. My brain is always going. And that's the same way my title came to, Human Behavior Hacker.
Which I love, Human Behavior Hacker.
Yes, and people hack computers. I hack humans. You have two sides of this. I've been asked sometimes, like, well, what you do is teach people how to manipulate others. And I says, no, I can give you a car and you can drive, get some drinks and kill someone because he was driving drunk. And I can have another car coming in behind and pick up the person you hit in the car and take it to the hospital and save it. What is in common? Two humans driving cars. So what I teach is helping people to better communicate, to better understand themselves. And when you understand yourself, who you are, how you process information, how introvert, extrovert you are, you can communicate others who you are, how you need to be talk, and how other people need to be taught. Because as a human, we tend to express to others what we think they want, but we never ask what they want.
So Susan, when you just said that definition or those pieces that you're talking about, when I hear that, I immediately think emotional intelligence.
Oh, yes. You know what? Emotion is data. If you know how to process that data, it's impossible that you have conflict. And again, emotion is data. Everything is a data that you can process. People like me use emotional intelligence to get a data and the process to better communicate.
Talk more on that, because I've got a couple questions as we get into this, because I use this all the time. And when I talk about emotions, that really emotions do one of three things. From my perspective, they craft the kind of decisions that we're going to make. They also deal with how we're going to behave. And
lastly, our performance, how we're going to perform. Those are the three things that I tend to think about when I think of emotions, so to speak, and how they drive us.
Yeah, and when somebody have an emotion and you don't detect that emotion correctly, you're not going to be able to address. If you are about to have a meeting when you need to have a brainstorm where you need to pitch a project to a client in a couple of weeks, and you come to the room and somebody shows sadness when you says, "Hey, how is everyone?" and you don't pick that sadness and you don't address it, that person is not going to be present. So you need to read yourself, you need to read people, and you need to read situations.
And what do you do when you have somebody say, emotional intelligence, I can't do that?
First of all, I ask, I says, being in this meeting is going to help you to erase the problem you have. You want to excuse yourself. You want to be part of the meeting. But if you feel that you're not in the top of your game, excuse yourself. I would say it's two ways when you frame options to other people. If it's someone who is introvert and is completely emotionally blocked, and if you give three options or you give two options and you left a third option where the person can pitch the other option, that what can be done, it's great. Now, when the person is self-spoken, is a person who usually express that what they want to do, I would say, what do you want to do? What do you need us to do? And let the other person frame the options. But you need to address, you need to ask. If you ask the right questions, the people is going to answer to you. I always say, people don't lie to you. You don't make the right questions. You don't have bad or good relationships. You got relationship with you, two people communicate, meaning they ask questions and they reply to those questions, and you have relationships with that channel of interaction doesn't happen.
You must see yourself, having been in this area for over 2 decades, the change. I can only imagine, because I first got involved with emotional intelligence back in 2008. And when I started, I remember one of the organizations that I went into that I had worked for previously. I went back in and met with the sales director, and he said, "You can talk to me about any training you want to do when you come back here, just not that emotional intelligence BS," was his exact.
Oh, welcome to the club, Patrick. I still hear that, like, "Oh, you should be on a wheelchair next to the tarot readers." And like, "Oh, you want me to read your face? I can do that too, honey."
Which is funny, but we all do it. We're emotions. We're either satisfied or frustrated or stressed or happy. So why not understand how to really harness that, my own as well as somebody else's? And we all have the ability, right? Because we probably can all think of that person that said, "No, I'm not angry."
Oh, you're angry. If you're telling me I am not angry, you are angry. Like, yeah, it's when people says, "Oh, do you think I'm lying to you?" Take away the first phrase and that person is saying is lying to you.
I'm lying.
That is called linguistic statement forensic analysis. People is telling you you're not paying attention. You know what other misconception that is fascinating me? The University of Pennsylvania that did a study between extroverts, introverts, and ambiverts. Only to clarify, introverts is people who need to recharge energy and thinking by being by themselves. And extroverts are people who, after a stress day of work, is still going to go out to have a beer with friends or interact with others. And ambiverts are the people who can navigate both. In my case, as an introvert, I needed to learn to navigate both, because when I have a training and I need to be for 2 days in a row training a team of sales rep or whatever team I'm training, I need to put my extroversion out. After that, I'm going to hide myself probably for 2 days. But the University of Pennsylvania did a great study which says ambiverts pull in 20% more revenue than introverts and 32% more revenue than extroverts. Why? You don't need salespeople who are all extroverts. You don't need all the sales reps who are introvert.
Yeah.
You need people who have the emotional intelligence to navigate situations depending on who you have in front of you.
Yeah. And my wife sometimes gives me a hard time. She's like, you morph into the environment that you're in. And at first I was offended by it, thinking that she was thinking that I'm just disingenuous when I do that. And it's not. I just sort of read the environment around me, and if I want to be part of that, then I find a way to acclimate into that, and not in a, I think, unethical way or a manipulative way, but I just try and fit in.
How much do you think you are in tune with happen around you because emotional intelligence, or because introversion, or because you're a natural reader? You know how many people is natural readers and they don't know about it?
If I were to think back over as far back as I can go, I would think it's just been wired into me. Growing up, I always felt this way, that I was able to decipher the environment that I was in. And I don't know whether it's, I'm the youngest of 10 kids.
Oh my God, now you had it. You want to know why? Here you go. Yeah, you have your answer. People who need to survive such environment, it's surviving for having time on the shower, your toys, not being bullied by your brothers and sisters, that give you an emotional intelligence to read any situation before it happening. Now you have your answer. I save you thousands of dollars of therapy. You're a natural.
Well, I'll tell you, if we have to eat lunch together at any point, you just step aside, because I eat quickly. And that's probably part of that survival, right? You either ate quickly, or maybe you didn't eat. You certainly didn't get seconds in my house. So.
You know what? You can determine if somebody has been institutionalized, like on jail, or an institution, the way they eat. The way that people eat says a lot. When somebody has been in an environment where you need to fight for the food, you're going to find people who hack the food with one arm. They're going to be protecting the food. Another thing, when people has been on schools, or has been in an environment where other people he was eating with them, like brothers and sisters, because they eat really fast, so they can eat double.
Yeah, that was it for me.
Oh, here you go. You know what? Professor David Matsumoto on the University of San Francisco, he take the work that Paul Ekman did on microexpression to the next level. And he is a coach in martial arts. I don't recall which one at this point, but he is an expert in martial arts. So he took the kid to a tournament, and he find out by observing that people who is being born blind and people who has been born with the ability to see, they have the same microexpressions and body expression when they lose and when they win. This is telling us that we have a memory DNA about emotions, how somebody can show sadness when they never see it. Because a lot of people says, well, you learn from your parents. You learn from your parents a lot of things. You learn how to lie, and you learn how to deal with emotions. Why? Because when your mom says, don't tell your dad that we spent all day on the shopping. Don't tell your auntie I'm here. Tell him, no, I'm not here if she's calling. So we mimic what our parents does. And the same way how we deal with emotion. If with parents didn't deal with our emotions and they were involved, you're gonna be a project of that environment. But in microexpressions, they're coded. So if I see you doing an expression, even though I don't know what the expression means, my memory brain is going to be sending a message to my emotions. For example, when you cross your arms, it's not that you close to an idea. When people pick their noses or they cover their faces, there are a lot of misconception in what it has to do with microexpression and body language. But something that I says be extremely careful is mirroring someone if you don't know what the heck are you doing. Why? What about if you're angry and I don't pick what you have is anger and I'm mirroring that? So what you're gonna see is anger. Over your anger, it's no way that whatever situation you are on is gonna work.
That's really interesting. So I read a book a number of years ago. It was written by a gentleman named Joe Navarro. And the book was titled What Everybody is Saying. And he was an ex-FBI agent, I believe, for over 2 decades and would profile people. And
yeah, I read all the books. Joe is one of the persons that I haven't studied with. I get to a level in body language where I ended up not studying with him. He was in Florida giving classes. I study with other people. But do you know how he ended up being so good in what he did and what he does? And by the way, he said when he started doing what he did on the FBI, body language wasn't something that you can talk to somebody like me and get a study. He was the son of Cuban immigrants. When he came to the United States,
that's right.
He didn't speak English.
That's,
so in order to assess situations, he need to read people. My case, my parents were diplomats, and we was traveling all around the world, and I need to assess people before I met them, because not all the time I understand the cultural IQ of the language was spoken. So you see how people who does what we do have common commonalities, like the same way you, Patrick, was the number 10 of 10 brothers and sisters. So that's what it makes you really good observing situation and being able to cope and understand emotional intelligence.
It's so funny just having this conversation. It does all come together. And I remember now the story behind Joe Navarro. And I found his book so interesting. I reference it a lot when I do work strictly on emotional intelligence around awareness of others and being able to read other people's body language in terms of their facial expressions and what they're doing with their hands and their feet. And there's just so much there. There's a richness to it, this autonomic nervous system that we have that can't mask it. It naturally bleeds out of us.
He have a new book called The Dictionary of Body Language. I just got the book. I haven't had time to read it, but I think I'm going to get the audiobook so I can go over. I like to hear books and read it at the same time. And yeah, he have this pocket that you can put in your briefcase, on your backpack, and keep it with you all the time. And I would advise people to read different subject matters on any topic that you want to learn. It's good to know how different people approach, and it's good to read and know about the ones who does it wrong and the one who does it right. I study with some people that I only take the class to know what I don't need to be doing.
Exactly. On your website, it says, learn how to hack people. And I know you and I had a conversation prior to this one around influence and work with Robert Cialdini. I had been down to his trainings down in Arizona. And one of the things that he always stresses around this idea of influence, which is the same thing you mentioned in the beginning, you used the car analogy. He talks about influence as ethical influence, that basically it's understanding that these are just natural principles, that you can either use it for good or for bad. So when you talk about how to hack people, what does that look like in terms of training people?
I'm the only person who does all the channels, and now embark myself, because like my friend says, because you don't have anything to do, you need to get that too. I get myself, and what is equal to a master in movement pattern analysis is how people move their bodies and make decisions. Is used by the military and the intelligence to determine how powerful people or politicians are going to make decisions. I cannot talk about this yet because it's going to be a 24 months strong certifications. But beside that, I do body language, microexpressions, face reading, or best known as physiognomy, statement analysis, and personality types. And now I'm going to do MPI, movement pattern analysis. I do not believe that you can be a good hacker, a human behavior hacker, or a good profiler if you do not navigate all the points. Because if I read your face, I can determine if your ears are small or big, to determine if you're visual or audit. So the words I'm going to use when I talk to you, with statement analysis and linguistic, are going to be visual or audit. I need to determine if you're self-suiting yourself, so you're kinesthetic. That's body language. When I talk to you about process, the shape of your eyebrows is how you process information. You're a people person, facts and data, or you want to be right based on knowledge. So what information I need to give to you. Now, when I know how to communicate with you, because I know those features, I need to start paying attention, and you respond. You can be responding to me without talking. Sometimes I say to people, thank you, I have the answer I needed. Like, I didn't open my mouth. Yeah, but you know what? Your body was yelling, was screaming to me what you want to do. So if I tell you, hey, Patrick, what do you want to do Saturday? You want to go to friends? You want to go to the cinema, or just want to be binge watching the last season of Game of Thrones? How your body lean to me or back, or the expression of smile or dislike in your face, I don't need you to tell me what do you want to do. I already know. If you says, well, I decided I maybe gonna cut the grass. Okay, decided is a thought, it's not an action. If you says, I decided, I probably gonna see you on the backyard having a beer with the neighbor with the lawnmower in your hand, but not cutting the grass, because it's a decision. So that is how you need to put everything together. And we have trainings where people have it as for 8 hours, and we divide it this way we can. We divide it in groups, and we change rooms, and we do it really dynamic. But most of the trainings are 4 to 5 days. We don't do it in the same week because it's too much information and people get overloaded. But I can tell you, after 6 to 8 hours, I can have somebody who can start hacking me easily. Sometimes what we do is tune up. It's like you have a piano. You can have the best piano in the world, but in some point you need to tune it up. So that's what we do with some people. People like you, for example, if we need to do a training, probably a training is going to be go to your skills and tune them to be maximized, not to reframe it.
Is there one that is easier than another?
Has to do with you. It's not that I don't want to answer. My case, I always put it out there because I found out that when I say it, people just write to me and come back to me after keynote speaking and like, thank you very much for saying it. I'm true. I'm dyslexic. I have spatial dyslexia, and my brain is wired different. When you have dyslexia, you pay attention to things that other people don't pay attention. But for example, I have my body usually covered in bruises because I'm really clumsy. I says, let's go to the left, and I'm pointing to the right. My grammar and my spelling is horrible. Even though English is not my first language, and I've been in this country for 20 years, and I read all the time. I don't have TV. I read all the time. I love reading. I still have problems with my grammar, and I'm gonna have it all my life. Why? Because dyslexia make the words jump. So the words make a sense in my head, but they say something different. Besides that, for many years I was under the impression I never gonna accomplish anything in my life for that. I found out that's what made me so good. So I have people on the team who's really good with microexpressions or body language or linguistic. So it has to do with what piques your attention. So when I need to do a one-on-one coaching, or somebody says, okay, when you need to work with politicians, or you need to work with CEOs, or you need to work with entrepreneurs who need to pitch an idea, usually what I do is I test them. And I show them videos, and I show them text, and see what is the subject that is easy for them to capture the concept. People get fascinated with face reading. Why? Because I don't need to know you. I don't need to talk to you. I can download a picture from Facebook, and today you can Google anyone, and I can do a profile. I can watch a video of you in YouTube of the news, and I can determine how your baseline and body move. But some people doesn't pick those cues. Some people usually get more fascinated with face reading, I think because it's new, regarding that it's not well advertised, and people is afraid to face reading. So for public demand, face reading is what capture most people, but not always people have the easy path to learn it. It's really, really complicated. I still met with that team of people that we study all around the world every other week, and my mentor will still yell to me when I have some features wrong.
I would think it's got to be intimidating too for some people. If they know what you do and they're around you, they're thinking, how am I being read right now? Like, what are you thinking about me right now?
It's a curse and it's a bless. I got divorced many years ago, and when I was dating, it's funny because some people Google my name and says, when you was a stylist, like I never was a stylist, a fashion stylist, I create a fake profile to have a personal life because I needed, when I was trying to date, I was saying that I was working in the fashion industry because it was easy to say that, explain people what I was doing. So when start knowing each other, I would start telling slowly, really slowly, what I do. In the case of my friends at this point is like, hey, can you read my Bumble? Can you read my Match? Can you read my Tinder? Friends is like, oh, I have a job interview. I need you to read me this. Can you find me these people? So they start utilizing me. So I think I did a bad business telling them what I do, because now I have friends coming over, sending me pictures, and on top of my work, I need to be helping my friends who I love to. Regarding the people that we work on the team, I do it fairly that I send them my profile completely, from a statement to baseline body language, microexpression, and face reading. And everybody is trained, from the people who does media to the people who it's profiling to the commercial aspect. Everybody have training in what we do. So everybody have the same tools and nobody is under anybody else. Obviously, some people is better than others. For example, my assistant, I never met anybody so gifted like Elba. She is wicked. And when I have doubts with things, I send them to her like, oh no, boss, is this like, oh my God, I hate you and I love you. But she's really good. And you know what? She's dyslexic. She's going to be one of the best physiognomies I ever met.
You had grouped IQ, EQ, and CQ, cultural IQ, together. I was wondering, can you talk about how do the three of those fit, or how do you tap into those? Because I think that's really important.
Well, intelligent is everybody take an IQ test, and everybody take the same IQ test. And in 1983, an American developed, Howard Gardner developed that we have 9 types of intelligence. So when I started reading about the different type of intelligence, who's spatial, interpersonal, linguistic, bodily kinetic, interpersonal, existential, logical, mathematic, who's the normal IQ that used to take on the school, musical and naturalistic. I'm not going to talk a lot about the different kinds because people can Google it, and I think it's more important to move forward and how to put it together. I started reading with Daniel Goleman about the different kind of empathy, emotional IQ. And when I was reading this, I was talking with people and like, okay, I have people who work with emotional intelligence on the team, and he always says that I'm not an empath. And I have friends who says I'm extremely empathetic. And like, what about if empathy has to do with the same IQ? We have different kind of empathy. So I found out that my idea was an original. Coleman was talking about cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and compassionate empathy. But I wasn't satisfied enough. So we come up with 3 kind of empathies: the emotional, the fixer, and the wave. The emotional is the one who feel your pain. But when you have somebody feeling your pain, you blocking the other person to have interaction, because now that pain is sharing. And sometimes when you have a crisis, not everybody needs to be crying with you. You need somebody who can pick the chaos, can move forward. So that's the fixer. I'm an emotional fixer. And I found out through my chin and my eyebrows. I have pointy eyebrows and round chin, meaning that when I talk to people, I talk in a way they can understand and they need to be taught. But my pointy eyebrows wanted to be right based on knowledge. So that's make me the self-appointed fixer. And that's what I'm like, okay, when you have a problem and you come to me and says, oh, my boyfriend is cheating on me. Oh, great. Finally, you understood. Now we're going to go to the gym. You're going to move. We're going to go to do a haircut. Like, yeah, but I'm emotionally stressed. That guy was bad for you. Let's move on. So that's the kind of person. When you finish crying, I'm going to help you to go back to your feet. Now, the wave is the one who can feel your emotions, help you to cry, and hold your hand when you're on the process to move forward. And there's nothing wrong with that, because like in every team, you need people who can feel the feelings but fix the problem. If everybody's crying, nobody's fixing the problem. If your basement is flooded and everybody's crying and running like a chicken without a head, nobody's gonna find where the bulb is and close the water. That's me. When crises happen, I'm jumping and fixing things. When people start crying, I'm like, why are you crying? It's fixing. Oh, I'm emotional overloaded. Like, go for a run. So those are different. Now, you have intelligence and you have emotional. But today, I learned that cultural differences doesn't happen because I'm working with somebody in China or somebody in South America. Problems and cultural boundaries, not because we work beside it, we work with other continents, but we have problems with different states. So I understood after a long research with this, that we have intelligence, we have emotions, but we need to have cultural IQ. We need to understand how people need to be taught, how people perceive, and how the environment affect the way we're gonna put everything together. There was a study done where it shows where when we negotiate our salary, depend where we are located are the bonus that we're gonna ask. In the Midwest, in Chicago where I'm located, people is gonna be willing to sacrifice other things for family time and working from home. People in places like San Francisco, Houston, and New York are interested in cultural and the cultural of the company. People who are located in Seattle and in Boston, for example, they're interested to know how much you're gonna invest on them and how much training you're gonna give them. So that is a cultural difference. If you are negotiating a salary or you're negotiating a contract, someone who's in another state, you need to do a research to know what is the cultural related to that place. So now how cultural IQ has to do with intelligence and emotions.
So how do I improve my cultural IQ? What are the cues that I start to pick up on that? Or how do I start to get an idea on my landscape?
It's simple. How many kids you have?
3.
Okay. Any of those is on the age of 4?
No.
How old is the youngest one?
So youngest is 13.
Do you remember when he or she was 4 years old?
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember how many questions they did? A kid at the age of 4 years old does around 309 questions a day. How was the last time they used it to assuming something? You make the questions. And when I say you, I says the people in general. Asking questions is the best way to learn. And nobody can get offended when you come and says, you know what, I just moved to San Francisco and I want to know more about you and what people does and how they do it. I talk to Uber drivers. Everybody knows something that you don't know. When I'm going to a different city, I talk to the Uber drivers, I talk to the policemen, I talk to the people on the airport, I talk to the people on the hotel, I go to a bar and talk to the bartender. By the next day, I'm on top of what is the cultural IQ of the place, because those are the people who manage and stay in contact with around a lot of people, executive, waitress, whatever you can imagine, that's people who knows how they need to be managed. They have all the gossip.
Yeah, interesting, because when I'm thinking of that, I'm thinking the opposite of that now in terms of how I might show up at a city where it's more unconscious bias for me, where I've made a lot of assumptions based on what other people have told me or what I think it is, and I ignore things that go against that. And we see that all the time, and whether it's in working on teams or poor relationships as managing a team, that oftentimes unconscious bias is a culprit to that, which I think plays into a lot of what you're talking about. If we're not aware, really trying to test our own awareness on these things, we just go to our defaults. We miss out on so many things, whether it's microexpressions or facial expressions or body language, whatever it is.
I wanna break another myth. You cannot read body language and microexpressions from a picture. So you can read a face on physiognomy by a picture, but you cannot determine if the action the person is doing, it's related to a microexpression or body language attitude. What you need to have is a video to code those. Because in my case, I have an asymmetric smile. So if you take a picture with me, for me smiling next to another person, it's gonna look like I have contempt or I have superiority from the person that I have in front of me. Nope, get a baseline. I have an aphasia, so I smile only one side of my face.
So Susan, if I'm listening to this and I'm like, where do I start? Like, what's something that I can start doing to get better at this? What would you recommend to me?
I would say try to find out if you're good at spotting people or listening to the words. So when you do a self-assessment, that if you can pick up when people says, I love politics. And the other day I was listening to a person do a deposition on the radio. It says, as much as I can tell you, we make the decision and say, stop, I have an hour of questions there. And the journalist who was on the phone with me, then I was pitching on the deposition, says, what? As much as I can tell you, meaning there is a lot of things that he cannot tell. And we made the decisions, that means there were another options on the table that were left out. Why? Start digging. And the journalist says, I've been doing this for 20 years and I didn't cut it. So try to go and listen to politicians. You're gonna find so many videos on YouTube, people doing what I do. Try to not to watch the comment of the person who does the analysis, and try to see what is easy for you to read and go for it. You have a lot of books out there. I would say you don't have a lot about face reading because it's not something that you can learn by a book.
Yeah.
I haven't met anyone who can learn face reading by a book, and you take practice and practice and practice and practice. And believe it or not, when my friends send me pictures to people they want me to read, it's a way for me to practice. So I would say go and test yourself. Don't be afraid to be wrong. I'm not right all the time. I haven't met one person who's right all the time. Nobody's 100% accurate in any field out there. So go have fun, read your friends, tell your friends to tell you the truth and a lie. Make your friends smile, show your friends gross pictures, make your friends angry with showing pictures of people they don't like, and try to spot how the body react, try to spot how the face react. And when you have done this with people that you feel comfortable, go to the next level. It's never too late to learn.
That's such a great point. It really is such a great point, because you can have people around you that you're already pretty good at being able to read what their emotion, how they show up, what's going on with them. And it's just taking that to a level with somebody else of seeing what are the things based on what I ask, how do they respond to it?
It's terrible how many misconceptions we do as a human with other people, because we don't take the time neither to make the questions, neither to learn about them, or to be aware our own bias and self-fulfilled prophecies.
Totally.
And I want to say something. People talk about the first impression, and it's true. You have 5 seconds to make a first impression, and you can kill a first impression when you give a wrong handshake. I have a class who is 45 minutes teaching people how to do handshake, and you can say that is a waste of money. Nope, believe me. I will start doing handshake and people give you feedback, and most people says, oh, I have a strong handshake. Like, I hate you. You want to overpower me. I would never would do business with you. So all those things kill you. But when somebody doesn't like you and you haven't done anything, has nothing to do with you. You can do a lot to work on a good impression, and it's way that you can modify a bad impression, but it takes you 7 times on good things to modify one bad impression. So take a lot can be done, but can happen that the woman you met have the same perfume that your ex-girlfriend had. or the men you met have the same color of eyes or shape that your ex-boyfriend who cheated on you have. So when people don't like you and you don't understand why, well, the good news is it has nothing to do with you. The bad news is not always you're going to be able to change that. And that takes a lot of weight on people like, oh, my boss doesn't like me. Well, it has nothing to do with you. Maybe you're too intelligent and your boss is afraid of, or maybe you're a reminder to someone. So go and ask why you don't like me. We need to work together. So let's try to make it work. That is emotional empathy.
Everything that you're saying, especially the unconscious bias that we place or that we activate in ourselves, that we shortcut so many opportunities. That's where I think this becomes so important to really, I think the more you have to force yourself to do this stuff, it's almost practicing a pause, that you're not quick to make a judgment on something. You really have to be more curious about what else might be going on here, which I think is exactly what you started talking about. So Susan, if somebody wanted to hear more about what you're doing, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I would say the website. Everything that we do, we run it first on the website and after that on the media. I told you, they make me go more public. So I'm going there. I've been procrastinated. I take the lead. I've been procrastinated doing videos in YouTube, took like, I think 10 months. So they put me a deadline. So we're going to start doing videos next month, I promise. But you can find us in humanbehaviorlab.com. And we are there out there in LinkedIn. You can find me from Susan Ibitz. I say yes to all the requests and I reply myself, not my assistant, myself, as much as I can to all the questions. I like to talk to people and says, why are you doing these questions? What's going on? Let's talk on the phone. People freaked out when they pick up the phone like, hey, it's Susan Ibitz. What's going on? Like, it's you? Like, yeah, it's me. I want to know what is going on. I love the picture you sent me. What's going on with this person? And they told you the story. I'm like, oh, that's matched with what I read. So yeah, I like people interacting. And please be as weird as I am. I love it.
There are so many applications for this.
It's nothing that I have found that you cannot apply. Doctors, nurses, sales, politicians, managers, assistant, policemen. We're going to be training the biggest team of policemen in the next couple of months. It's as much as I can tell you. And it's going to be the first unit who is going to have behavioral hacking training. We're going to nail them information on the head for 4 months. It's going to be amazing. That's how much this is happening.
And like anything else, it just takes practice. You just need to continue to do this stuff. And that's how you refine this skill of being able to do this. But
I still practice 2 hours a day. I still, after 27 years, I'm sorry that I interrupt you, I still take 2 hours a day to do 30 minutes of each one, reading articles and be practicing, watching videos and send them to other people to be evaluated. And still, I make mistakes and has to do with how present I am.
Susan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I love this stuff. I think it's so valuable for people. Again, as we continue to beat this thing up, but there's no place that you can't use this. And this isn't about pulling something over on somebody or, hacking in a negative sense, but the more you can read where somebody is, the more effective your relationship can be with them when you really start to understand what's going on. So thank you for taking the time and going through this. And I hope people will take the opportunity to go to your website and see what's on there. There's so much there. And again, thanks for taking your time to do this.
Thank you, Patrick, for having me on the show. Love it. And I told you when we talked on the phone before, I love the interview you did with a woman who was a recovered alcoholic, Red Barn, I think is the name. That was an amazing interview.
Yeah, Laura Benedict, she's awesome.
I like it because it was unfiltered. She was herself and you allow her to be herself, and you not always find that on a person who is interviewing you. And thank you, because you let your guest to be the guest and you be the interviewer. Great show.
Thank you. We're all trying to learn on this, right?
We are on the same path.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to future conversations with Susan. This is not the last one. I can promise you that.
I hope so. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Patrick.
Right.
Have a really good one.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
I hope you really enjoyed that conversation with Susan from the Human Behavior Lab. I think you can see if you go to her site, there's so much information on there in regards to this area of facial expressions or microexpressions and reading body language and tone of voice and all of these things. They're so important in terms of our ability truly to lead like no other. And I do believe this, that when we're able to do this, it does create an environment where our actions will inspire others to go where we want to go. If you know somebody that you think would find this interesting or benefit from this, please forward on to them. If you haven't already subscribed, you know the deal. Please subscribe to the podcast. And it would mean the world to me as well if you leave a rating or a comment in terms of how this was helpful to you. And until our next episode, I hope you're able to go out there and rise above your best.